You can go right ahead. We're gonna get started online here in just a minute. One of the things I will probably start a little early because I'm still learning about how YouTube works as far as going live. I think it only allows 30 minutes. I'm not sure, maybe longer. It could be that just because we got started, this is a limitation in it. Um, but anyway, I'm not going to wait too much longer before we get moving on today's work. That's better. But notice you, if you pull this hand, when you make that turn, if you pull this hand, it'll pull you forward, right? If you pull the yin hand and pull it, it it pulls you back, right? And it's kind of like what we're going to talk about today. In fact, if you're ready, Becca, we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, we spend a lot of work today, um, and I made the thinking processes. It's one thing to show up to practice; it's another to show up to practice with a purpose, right? And if you have a purpose in your practice, and the purpose of your practice can be whatever it is for you today, right? When I first started practicing, a lot of times it was just to be a better person. I was just trying to learn to be more patient with myself, learning, trying to understand myself, trying to understand why I ended up in these places that I just didn't understand how did these things happen. Sifu would introduce things to me in the processes of learning the kung fu to help me understand me, just like Jeff and I just had a conversation about him trying to learn one piece of mechanics, but it wasn't about the movement. It was about understanding your mechanics and then understanding your commitment to that. And if you can't make there's two things about a commitment. First, if you know what you're supposed to do, because it's hard to be committed to anything if you're not sure what it is that you're supposed to be doing, right? Because there's just too much wishy-washy that your mind is going through. See, if we'll call it mental junk. But the other thing that happens is that you know that this is the right thing to do. You know this is how you're supposed to be able to do it. And then you still don't make a full commitment to do it. You're too busy analyzing it. You're too busy questioning it. You're too busy being concerned. So you never make a commitment. And then you'll turn around and go, well, this doesn't seem to be working. Where it works just fine. It's just that when you do certain things, you have to make a 100% commitment to it so that you can make new mistakes. And when you make those new mistakes, then the opportunities present themselves that you can make adjustments. But without the commitment, you can't learn. Even though you know it's the right thing to do, even though it makes sense to you, and even though you're doing it, you still can pick up little pieces of a lack of commitment. Well, in the old kung fu, there's a thing that shows up in many of the teachings called the six harmonies. The external three sets of harmonies, and I use that word with quotes because it really wasn't the word harmony gave it this foo-foo feel that was a translation. Seafood never called it like harmonies. He referred to them more as weldings or fusions, right? That you learn to fuse these things together. You learn to weld them together. The three external ones was is that and we talk about this in your practices, is that one of the things that you try to learn to do is the synchronization and fusion of your hips and shoulders. So that when you move your hips, you start to learn, move my shoulders with it. If I move my hips, move my shoulders with it. If I move my shoulders, move my hips. And so this is a way of developing a fusion so that you learn a single way to move. Then elbows and knees, so that if my elbows and knees are moving, right, they're moving with a purpose and a harmony. Okay. And then, of course, hands and feet, so that when you're moving, sometimes the hands and feet have a synchronization and a fusion to them that are serving a similar purpose, right? And the easiest way to know when you're not doing them is because things feel clunky and they don't feel right. Okay. And maybe it's a Jeff and I were working on the fact that sometimes it's a matter of knowing where is my balance supposed to be, or where's the pressure supposed to be, because you can change pressure of your feet and not change your balance. And we do that exercise by just simply staying right here. And if you just push your knees back and keep your waist still, everything else is still, you'll feel the pressure change in your feet, right? And then you have the change of balance. So, anyway, those are the three external ones. And we work on those all the time and you can see them. But the first one of the internal, three internal harmonies, but we only want you to be focused on one today, is where you try to match and fuse together what the Chinese would call your heart. And what they meant by heart is what we would call your spirit or your mind. And think about that, whatever your spirit wants is kind of what your heart is wanting, right? If you want to translate it like that. But so you have the heart fused together with your intention. When your heart and your intention can serve the same purpose, things will open up immensely for you. And the way that that would be spoken, for that to happen, for the heart to get matched up with the intention, your emotions have to be calm and focused so that your intention can move the body with clarity and purpose. I'm going to say that one more time. For you to match up your heart with your intention, your emotions must be calm and focused so that your intention can guide your body with clarity and purpose. Would you say, Jeff, that what you and I were just working on these last 15 minutes were kind of a symbol of that, right? How you think about things, having the clarity and purpose, you know, requires first you have to get out of your emotional state, whatever that is, and just put yourself in a calm and focused place. Sifu Chin had his work cut out for him when he met me. And that's why he would often say to me, Tim, you look like you're mentally constipated. And I was being, I was so overly focused on the wrong things. If you focus on being calm, it's amazing how many things else will open up for themselves. So I know this is a lot of dialogue, but when you take that and you apply uh, uh, um, your emotions being calm and focused so that your intention can move your body with clarity and purpose, it changes and is applied to you. Like if you're in a confrontation, if you're martial training, just in self-defense or whatever it might be, the way that you would normally hear it from a coach would be is that you have to learn to train your mind to be quiet and alert at the same time. You can't be trying to box and say, I'm going to hit him in the nose. I'm going to hit him in the nose because now your mind is overly focused on one thing. And so you get kicked in the cojones, right? Because you tried to decide what you were going to do. You were not focused. So when it says to try to focus uh, and put your mind in a place, pretty much what it's saying, at least in my interpretation of it, is that you try to put your mind somewhere in the center so that you can see everything. But if you decide that you want to focus on one little dot, this is the way you're supposed to say it. This is the way I thought you were going to do it, or this is what I wanted to have happen. Then you miss the bigger picture, right? When we and when it comes to us, I've been there. Y'all have seen me here on. When you lose the focus of taking care of your health, for example, it's amazing how the picture changes throughout our lives. All of a sudden there's a valuable token and going, okay, gosh, I can't move the way I used to. I can't lose that focus again. Okay. So today, when you're working on how do you go about physically doing that? Well, usually it's going to be a matter of I like to use footwork drills as a way of doing it. In fact, let's just do this one. One that I like to do is that, and this shows up a lot of times in your Tai Chi, we call it half stepping. Okay. is so a lot of times when you're driving forward, okay, and I'm gonna change this into like a offensive lineman because that's what I played for so many years in football was an offensive lineman. Now I used to think to myself, gosh, if I'd have known this back then as far as footwear goes. But when I'm driving forward, this is a transfer away, right? From back to forward. Now, when I get right here to the forward piece, I need a set of mechanics to help me continue forward without losing what I've already gained, right? Because if any of you have ever been in a confrontation, the hardest thing is to get an advantage inside of there. And the worst thing you could possibly do is get in there and you have the advantage, and then you go, oh, yeah, I got it. No, you just gave it back, right? To keep it, to keep that commitment. So when I drive forward and I get into here, I want to be able to bring this foot up half the distance and then drive forward again. Okay. That's why, when you see an offensive lineman on run blocking, can I borrow you, Jeff? Right. If I'm blocking Jeff, I'm trying to move him out of the way. When I come forward, the last thing I want to do is drive forward and then go, because as soon as I let up the pressure, he's going to move forward again. He's going to try to take his wheel isn't the same as mine because he's an ass, right? So but the idea is that if I can push forward and then keep this moving forward, every time I push forward, then I take a quick half step and forward. Notice that the lack of commitment would show up if I get here and I brought this up and then tried to sit back. Then he would feel a pressure change. Yeah. He said he pushed me over, right? Uh, so in your mind, when you're practicing, you want to practice pushing forward, stake the rear foot, and then drive forward again. Okay, do that. Okay, that was okay, but it was more of a hop, right? That was better. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Now mechanics. All right. Remember now the intention here, our focus is that once we get in here, notice that if this step is too long, if this foot goes from here to here, it's too slow. And now the pressure is going to change on his side. So it has to go no more than half the distance so that it can quickly get back out. Okay. So try it like that just a little bit more. Y'all can do that at home too. If I'm facing you and walking to you this way, I'm going to drive in, half step, drive forward, half step, drive forward. In some styles, it's even smaller than that, and they call it inch stepping, right? But then go ahead and practice with the other foot if you haven't already changed. Okay, that's a little too big, Becca. See how far your heels are? That's better. Yes, good. Good. That was too far. Yeah, there you go. Good. So that's the easiest way. If you had a yardstick between my heels, you want to go half the distance and no more. It's amazing. Ryan used to work on this all the time. I used to call him Little Napoleon, right? Because everything had to be so big, right? So when you come across, it was like here. Now I've had a couple of students thinking of Dwight. I saw Dwight one time almost kick his other shoe off. He literally kicked his foot out. It went bam, and he was supposed to be doing what we're doing here. The idea is that you're having to learn how to practice big commitment with. That's what we're doing. And based on what I was just working with on Jeff, as you saw, I can prove that this is right. Let me borrow you again, Jeff. Is that, I can prove that this is right because if Jeff gives me just a moderate resistance, I know that I can push in, get a little bit of a change. Okay. And that if I bring this foot up too far, then we're back at neutral ground. In fact, I may be at a disadvantage, right? So I know it's right in the physics of what I'm trying to do by generating a force, half step, half step, and I can keep moving here. So I know that that's mechanically correct based on the conversation when we started this with. So now, if I know it's right thing to do to get the what I hope to have happen, and I got the mechanics for it, now it's just a matter of commitment. I have to match together that, calm my mind down, and just let let the intention guide the motion so that it comes through. Now, as simple as that sounds, this is a really good example of me just using my background as an offensive lineman as a way of run blocking through. Um, if you're doing something more complex, and always remember that the more complex something gets, the more challenging it is to maintain those simple principles because your mind will get caught up into all the flair, right? Which was kind of what was happening earlier. So, with something Jeff and I were working on earlier, is that if you're making a movement and I'm turning myself around, okay, like so. So if you see me here and I'm just taking a little drop step right now into here, okay, go ahead and do it with me. So if I'm sitting here, I got one hand up here near my chin and heart. The other one is about the level of my ears here. When I drop my foot back, I can drop my foot back and then turn my body around it. Okay. And that's a good exercise to practice. And it doesn't matter how far you drop the foot back. I could drop it way on back and do the same thing. Okay. But right now, I just want to practice a smaller step because what I'm trying to do is put my hips and shoulders together, keep my mind calm here in the center, and then learn how to use my intention so that when I drop this foot back, when I turn, I like to take this hand, the one that's by my heart, and use it to pull like I'm pulling a rip cord. So I drop back and I pull this one like a rip cord, and I feel a difference in the speed. That's one. But you'll also feel a difference in how it drills you into the earth, right? Because since this hand is starting here and finishing here, if I use it like a ripcord in that direction, it actually helps the mind drill into the earth, which will help you spin around and correct some of that other stuff that we were working on earlier. But this is one of those, if you'll just pull and let your intention, what we say, let your intention guide the motion with clarity and purpose. Take this hand, and Jeff was working on it. So I'm gonna, the difference between dropping and using this hand, what will happen is that when you rip it, it actually rips you forward. If you use the other hand, it actually rips you back and down. And the difference is just simply your intention. But the outcome feels really massively different inside of you. Okay, let's go ahead and just do a few more and just practice that. Let me get a little swallow of water. Mm-hmm. That was good, Becca. Much better. Okay. Okay. Any big questions? No. All right. Again, these are just exercises for you to, and they come right out of your Tai Chi forms um, to help you exercise that principle, right? There's two other ones, but you got to get through this one first and always come back to it because every time you start to learn something new, you have got to go through the same process so that your body can trust your mind and your mind can trust your body that they're working together. So when you look at some of the basics of your Tai Chi, let's say, let's take, I tell you what let's do. This will be for Bruce or some of the other folks who know some of the old style with me. Let's look at the old style brush knee. For you all, it may be an introduction. But when you look at the old style brush knee, if you see it in a book, it's going to look like this. Okay, now I'm going to turn to the side so you can see me here. Okay, there's certain mechanics about this that I'll explain in a little bit. Now, if I'm doing this and I want to do it like a Yang 24 practitioner, how most people interpret it, they'll be like this. You notice how the palms change? Pretty much everything else stayed the same as compared to here. Now, I'm going to explain why here in just a moment, so that we have some clarity as far as what am I trying to be focused on and what am I trying to do here. Notice that my weight is still forward about 70-30, and that my palm, in this case, my right palm, the little finger is higher than the index finger. So there's a slight rolling to the side. In fact, you see that the Lao Gong, the center of my palm, is slightly turned out and away from me. And my other hand is pretty much in front of my heart, at the level of my heart, just inside of my foot. Okay, like so. All right. Good place to practice. Stay right there, down just a little bit. And a slight feel. There you go. Just a slight turn in your waist. That's good, Becca. All right. Go ahead and let's do the other side. Okay. And a lot of times when you're first learning something and you're trying to get the intention right, don't overturn there. Okay. Come over here, Jeff. All right. So I'm going to work you through it. Go ahead. Left foot forward. Good. Okay. All right. So let's get this lined up. First, this is going to be just off of the hip. Okay. Because your big toe's pointing that way. So you want that intention. Remember that a lot of times your intention is directed. Do you even know which way to look? Right? I mean, that's a good start, right? And then when you do know which way to look, when you're not sure what to practice, look far. Look out about 45 degrees out, but don't focus on that little leaf out there at 45 degrees. Put your gaze in that direction and become aware of the panoramic view, is what I call it, your peripheral vision, so that you can see everything up, down, to the sides, but your gaze is now in the center. That's why I made the comment earlier. If you're looking at your health as the center of your gaze and you never lose that, then other things are peripheral, but they're good. Your business is good, your relationships is good, things like that are good. But if you focus on business and lose that center, there's a whole new cost. Okay. So when you're sitting here, that's what you want to try to do, is get your gaze in the right direction, become aware of everything. That will help with that intent. Mechanically, your body says, okay, I can feel what he's asking me to do here. My weight's forward. And there's this sensation, at least the way that I use it, that I'm sweeping something over to my left side, that I'm just slightly sweeping, not pushing, not blocking, just a slight sweep to the left. In fact, I could stay right here and do the other side and go back to the right. Don't move your feet. Just let the, this case, my right hand, the yang hand, the one that's furthest out, whenever you're trying to reel silk in Tai Chi Chuan, there's two ways of doing it. First is that the hands will mirror each other and help do the same intention, like you're twisting a pipe or turning a wheel, right? That's one way. The other is that when they appear to be doing opposite things, that the hand that's going from yang to yin has to lead the way. Okay. So in this case, in the brush knee, in the old style, is that this hand is going to start to turn and come to the right hip. And so when we're on this side and the opposite hand and foot is out, which is the only way you see it in most styles of interpretation, is that this is what we call to the unnatural side, because this is my closed side. When you turn it over to this side, this is my open side, the natural side. So a lot of times when you hear me giving instructions, I don't refer to left and right. You hear me say yin and yang, natural, unnatural, because it won't matter what foot is up. It won't matter what hand is up. Usually, as a practitioner, I know this is my yang side, this is my yin side. So now I want the yang that's going yin to lead the way. The hand that is going from yin to yang crosses over the wrist and over the top of the one as it passes by, just like so. Now you're practicing a reeling silk. Remember, the one that's going from yin to yang goes over the top. Good. That was good, Jeff. No, go ahead. Good. Now freeze. Okay. The reason I asked you to freeze, you're doing the two sides difference. This one, for whatever reason, notice how far this hand has come, and this one hadn't moved an inch, right? But this was the one that was supposed to lead the way, right? But this hand that's going from yin to yang had already moved a foot almost, right? So you have to slow down and go, okay, no, this has got to pull this one out. Now you're changing the intent. It's got to pull it out. When you change the intent, the clarity and purpose will come back into the practice. And you did the same thing. You see how your hand went from this hip all the way up to here, and that one moved an inch. Pull, pull you nice. There you go. You'll make new mistakes, but at least that one's in principle. And so I was corrected with them a lot of times, and you'll find this. It's very natural that this hand wants to take off instead of letting it follow instruction, because the mind says, yeah, throw it out. No, no, no. You have to tell your mind, you don't run this. My intention's going to run it. I'm going to take my time and retrain my intention with the purpose. Okay, and let me make sure that I explain the purpose. In the martial training, a lot of times, particularly in Tai Chi Chuan, you have to learn to use whatever space you have. Ando likes to say, the thing that he learned a lot when we were talking about things, and he was working diligently on his craft, is that we learn, especially in Tai Chi Chuan, to weaponize space. But what if there is no space? This is one of my little pet peeves, right? Is that okay? You have all these great skills, and you're going to do all this fancy stuff, but you happen to be on a set of stairs today. You have got to have space in your mind. And so with in the brush knee, you learn to use rotationary forces when you don't have advance or withdrawal forces to rely upon. Like when you see bat walking monkey, it relies on withdrawal forces. When you see something like single whip, for example, you can see the advancing forces, right? But what when you're stuck? You're pinned up against a wall. You're you can't step back. There's a cliff or a set of stairs behind you. Okay. When you're trying to learn rotationary forces, you have got to be able to move in the horizontal, in what we call the pi plane or the horizontal plane of the earth. And you have to practice your mind going, okay, I've got nowhere to go. I've got nowhere to go. So here I have to learn to move in a way that allows me to practice rotationary forces. Getting that force in your intention is extremely important, and it's used. So, and I'm gonna do it this way here. So if I'm out here, all right, pushing me a little bit. Now, if I'm gonna try to use a withdrawal force, I'm gonna back up. All right, push again. Now, if I use a rotationary force, did you see what happened to him? Did you see how his body just kind of rocked forward and off to the side? Because in my mind, as soon as he pushes, I'm just sweeping over to a side. If I imagine for a moment that I can't move backwards, let's turn this way so the camera sees it. Okay. So if I'm here and I go back, I would have this. That's a withdrawal force. It's not bad, but in this situation, I'm working on a rotationary force. So when I feel it coming, I'm over here to a side. And there's two parts to this. This is why the young hand has to lead the way. Because if he's pushing on me and I've trained him properly, then I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try to block him here or hold him off and try to smack him, which did nothing. He didn't move. It looked good, but it didn't do anything, right? But if I practice giving, I don't even have to use this hand to start with. But if I feel it and I pull it to my pocket, that's why my little finger is higher than my index because I'm not trying to suppress this hand like this. What I'm doing is I'm help turn it out to the side. So now this has this corkscrewing feel that takes Jeff's intention down my middle and it just rolls it and sweeps it over the side. The hand that's going from yin to yang just pops him so that push, so that now he's rocked. He's got his balance. You say, well, okay, well, that's great. And you have to practice that because the follow up to it is a center punch. So if I'm doing this, just stay here. If I'm doing this in a form, what will happen is you'll see me do this and then this, right? So I'll go 1, 2, 1, 2. And the reason you practice it, I'm not going to hit you, but I'm going to move a little quicker, okay? When I feel him push, as soon as I feel him falling into the void, weaponizing space, as he's falling into it, then I've already left it and I'm striking him just as hard as I can right in the center. Okay. So it feels like this, and I'm just popping him in the abdomen, but it's happening that with that kind of commitment and turn to it. But how did it feel from your side? It felt like it all happened at the same time. And and that's kind of that commitment, Dave. But the first step in that commitment is realizing, okay, mechanically, I have to trust that when I feel that pressure, this has to lead the way. I'm not going to push him off. I have to get him to go where he wanted to go, just not in the way he wanted to do it. Right? That goes back to our data, right? He thinks he's getting what he wants. He just doesn't know that I've changed some of the tweaks to the variable. He's got a misinterpretation of data. Get ready to come back to it. All right, let's just practice that a few more times, okay? Yeah, just another minute. So you're going to take the young hand, the one that's furthest away, and feel in your imagination that you're being pushed on. You can't retreat, you can't withdraw. So you're going to use a rotationary force. As this comes back to the pocket, it's going to turn, spiral up, and then this hand comes right over the top, just like so. And then the other one comes out. Remember now, the one that's coming out. Yes, there you go. Comes out over the top. All right. Okay, gang. So yeah, it's about that time. A quick half hour, it feels like. But you can use any part of your Tai Chi Chuan practice to get to that place to where you're trying to match your heart, your spirit up with your intention. And to do that, you have to have some idea of what my intention is. Does this feel like the right thing to do? And then how do I go about doing it? And then go through that process with a commitment until you forge them together. You weld them together. It's not harmony like a music. It's like taking two iron plates and welding them together so that you can trust that. Who wants to walk across a bridge that you're not sure if it's welded real good, right? And your body will sometimes realize that you haven't welded it real good and it doesn't want to walk across it. So that forging process it takes time. And basically, to get to that place, the process is to keep your emotions calm and focused so that your intention can move your body with clarity and purpose. When you have that, you won't have to worry about the result. It'll be there. Okay. Great practice today. See you soon.